Hey guys, Bunny here. And this is something a little different. I have a confession to make. Dev Diary is not daily anymore. I thought I could do it every day. Turns out, no. That was a big ask to code for a whole ass hour and then also edit an hour-long video and then upload an hour-long video while also making thumbnails and that kind of thing. And also doing regular content and streaming. So it won't be daily. It'll be just whenever I kind of can. I need to list some more things. Well, I'll get that off my chest in another video. What stuff we need and that kind of thing. What I'm doing before then though is I realize that a lot of you guys might not understand coding, and maybe you want to understand coding, and maybe you haven't clicked on my video because you're not really sure what I'm doing because you've never looked at a script before. All of my videos are tagged as like Unity beginner tutorial and that kind of thing, and I do try and explain everything I can when I can. I'm not a professional. I am still a beginner technically, but I have been looking at coding for most of my teenage years till now. So I do know, I have seen a fair bit of code, and I know what it looks like, and I know vaguely what most things do. It's just like basic syntax and mathematical equations that I'm not the best at as far as coding goes. So I thought I would make this fake script and explain everything that's happening on this script to kind of teach you how Unity functions work, how Unity scripts work. So Unity, if you didn't know, uses a script called C#. It used to use a script called Unity script, which was a modified JavaScript, if you've ever heard of JavaScript. They look very similar in JavaScript and I think Java as well. Void is replaced with function, and there's a few other like little things which you might have noticed in my daily developer diary. I write in things that are wrong and then I realize it's for some other script, because most of the issues that come with coding come from like syntax and figuring out how the syntax works for this specific code. So with this one we have void. So the first thing that happens when you make a new script in Unity, it puts these, which is using these different kind of libraries, and that means that you're using libraries from Unity Engine. So things like IEnumerator is not a C# specific thing. I'm pretty sure that is Unity specific. Now that's why it's not colored in this. So what happens there is that I can now use that, and I couldn't before, which is useful. It's useful when you're using Unity, because Unity has its own set of libraries and stuff. That's what an editor, like an engine, does. It gives you a set of instructions that you can use to speed up your game designing process. If you were making a game from scratch with your own engine, you would have to make all of these yourself, and that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of like maths that you have to add and do make functions for. What this is essentially is a ton of just all of this, like hundreds of different ones of these functions that you're making. So I'm making one out of millions, maybe. I don't actually know how many there are in Unity, but there's a fair bit. So it also makes, you'll have to type in a name and it'll make this, which is a public class fake script, which is what I've called it, and then mono behavior. I don't know why mono behavior is called mono behavior, but you have to put that in. I couldn't tell you why, if there's maybe like a poly behavior at some point and like it's for multiple things. I don't know. But yeah, so this is a class, and I think you can make multiple classes on the same script, but I couldn't tell you exactly how that works because I've never really paid attention to, I've never used classes when I'm programming because I've never actually programmed a full game. So that'll be like later on, maybe when I learn how to do it. Okay, so you might have noticed in this goblin handler that we've got, if you have been paying attention to the Unity engine but you were confused, we've got a lot of these, all this stuff going down. Now, these are global variables. So public means that anything can use it. If I wanted to write, say, public x2, and then I could write x, I could print x on any of these little voids, these functions, and it'll always be 2. X will always be 2, right? So like when I'm coding my goblins and my player, what you would usually use is like a velocity or like a speed. So then your character will have a constant speed and you can access that anywhere in your script constantly. The reason you have to do public is because if there are certain things that you want to be private, so things that will change and things that you can reuse as different letters. So usually like public variables wouldn't be X, Y, or Z because of Z. You use X, Y, and Z for small things inside of the code. So then you can change it around and it'll be different for each function. Okay, so the first things that I will need to kind of explain to you is the different types of variables. Now, a variable is basically a box. It's a labeled box. So the computer knows where this box sits on there. It has to be labeled with a specific type of variable. Now, there are a fair few types of variables. There's a double, there's a bool, there's an int, there's a float, there's a string, there's more, there's an array. Hang on, C# uses it like this, so it'll be like int that. Okay, so I'll explain these just really quickly. I'm gonna make these really quick, so this will be our first little thing. Global variables and variable types will be our kind of first thing, and then we can get into statements and stuff in the next episode. I wanted these to be quick so you can just kind of jump in, figure out what's going on, and then leave. So let's say all of these are public, right? Because they're over here. There's no reason they shouldn't be public because they can't be used anywhere if they aren't. So there's these, and then we write in our variable. So let's say this is decimal. No, decimal is actually a thing. I didn't realize that. I'll just write X, Y, Z, A. Do not do this when you're coding. This is just for me to kind of show you how stuff works. Let's start with int. So int is a non-decimal integer. If you do maths but you haven't done coding, you know what an integer is, surely. Basically anything without a decimal point in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, that kind of thing. So let's just make it 1 for now. Now a float is the next portion of this. So these are the numbers, I guess, that I'm showing you right now. Float is a decimal point number. Basically, if you write this, that works. Another way to write this, however, is if you write public A equals 1.0 f, it'll automatically assume it's a float because you've written f at the bottom of it, and so it automatically goes, okay, that's a float because you've written f on, like to the bottom of it. Integer means that you don't have to save as much data. If you don't need to use decimals, do not use decimals. Use an integer because it'll save space on your game. It'll be less processing speed. Floats use more processing speed, and I'm pretty sure what it does is like a float is 1 point and then like 1 to 9, right? So, or 0 to 9. So what happens there is a double is more detailed. It knows more things. So it'll be like, you can do like 1.123456789 kind of thing. I think it's better than that. Like, I think you can have 32 decimal places on float and 64 on double, but don't quote me on that. So they're the 3 different integers that I'm kind of aware of. There could be more. There is a apparently decimal function because it works. When it goes purple, that means it is a variable according, like on this thing. It's a different color for different things, but apparently decimal's a thing. So now for an easier one, bool. Now this is short for Boolean. If you don't know what Boolean is, basically it's true or false statements. So these can only be true or this can be false. A good reason to do that is, say, if you wanted to make sure that your player is on the ground, right? You can figure out its y coordinate, which would be a float. And you can say if it's like equal to that, then on the ground equals true. There are other reasons to use Boolean. Boolean is probably the most important part of coding. It is the backbone of computers. If you aren't aware, binary is essentially a system of true or false statements. Like when you write 01010101, right? That's actually false, true, false, true, false, true, false, true, false. If you weren't aware, if that's new to you, when you're looking at, say, binary integers kind of things, what that means is that the first integer is false, the second one is true, which will be 2, and then like the fourth integer is true, which I believe is 8, 10. I knew that was 10. I don't know why I had to count that out, and then it'll keep going along. So that's that. That's what a Boolean is. Boolean is the backbone of computing, essentially. Strings, basically it's a string of letters. So, hello. To be honest with you, don't know many reasons to change that up, but there are different types of strings. I believe there's letter, character, car, yeah. So character is a single letter. I'm not quite sure why that is a thing, except maybe to store less information, I guess. What a string is essentially is an array of characters. So what we're about to learn is arrays. Int, and then this little square usually means array or dictionary. It depends kind of on the context, I think. This is not how you type this. I think you have to write new array on this. I don't like using arrays. I try and avoid them because it's just weird to use in Void. Like in Python, you would just do this, like just basically do this and then just do X. Well, no, because it's an int. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so what that does is it stores numbers separately of each other in a list. So basically, if you wanted to store a list of maybe enemies, right? You could put like Goblin 1, Goblin 2, Goblin 3, Goblin 4. We actually do that in the Unity Engine tutorial. We have a list for goblins in the radius, and that stores all of the goblins in the area in a list. And then we can call them by itself, or we can do something else to kind of find them, which we'll explain in later episodes. That's basically all the global variables. There are obviously the decimals, characters. So the thing about arrays is an array is a list of variables. So you can do a public float array. You can do a public string. Public string would be useful for, say, let's assume that this int is actually a string, right? So a public string would be if you wanted to save people's names. So like Adam, Georgia, Andy, right? And then you go like, okay, list all the people in, maybe this is a class, right? Not that kind of class. This is a class. And you want to list all the people in your class, right? You can just type in all the names of the people and you can do stuff like that. I do want to say, it's a bit late. I should have started with this, but coding is important. A lot of people think that most jobs will be programming in the near future. Coding from home is a much more essential thing than it was very recently. And people are kind of realizing that maybe programs on your computer to help you do your business is the more important way to do things, and that everything should be pretty much from home, right? So I would say try and get into this as fast as possible. If you don't want to learn from me, learn from someone else. But I honestly think that having at least a basic understanding of programming is important in today's world. So I will see you guys in the next video. I guess this video will be called variables and variable types, and the next video will be called Introduction to Object-Oriented Programming, or Introduction to Functions, which has a better ring to it. Yeah, tell me if you want to see more of these, because I'm really passionate about programming. Not good at it, but I'm very passionate about it. So I'd love to share it with you guys. So if you are enjoying it, I noticed that a lot of you guys watched like the first episode of the Unity Engine thing, and then I think kind of dropped off, and I think that might be because it was just a lot very quickly. I was trying to make it as fast as possible, and in doing that I think I've confused a lot of you. So this is hopefully a way to slowly explain things to help you guys understand the content that I've uploaded previously and help you understand the content that I will upload in the future. So keep a lookout for the next developer diary, not daily developer diary anymore, and I'll see you in the next one. Signing out.